Good morning to all of you. I think it's rather pleasing to see many faces representing an interest in Somalia, a republic which is said to be undergoing agony, and you've just seen some expressions. The term agony suggests no rest, no repose. It also bespeaks great mental and physical distress. But at its roots, agony has another meaning. It means a contest, a struggle for victory. Given what the people of Somalia have gone through since the 1960s, but especially lately, given what they have collectively borne, they need a victory. And I see several prospects for such a victory. I could refer to the country's location, its physical location. If I were thinking in what people call geostrategic terms, with its borders so ordered as to allow major controlling influence in the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, all of East Africa, not to mention specific countries like Kenya, Ethiopia. That victory could come from the history of the spirit of independence which it presented to Britain and Italy, as each respectively sought to continue control over what was then called the strategic horn. That victory could come from ending of the many flawed transitions, elections, constitutions, councils that have masked questionable political ambitions, often aided and abetted from the outside. It could come from the size and material wealth of the country. It's a country the size of Texas. It has unexploited resources in the form of uranium, iron ore, tin, bauxite, copper, natural gas. There are even oil reserves. It would come from the youthfulness of its population, people who can, it is said, more easily forget. Somalia has a population which has 45% of its people that are 14 or under. It would also come from the enlightenment exhibited in the population's response to global initiatives, such as the constitution of the world's ocean, climatic change, biodiversity, endangered species, and ozone layer protection treaty, all of those engaged. It could come from the relative homogeneity of its population, 85% of Somalia, or it could come from all the above. To me, however, especially in face of low levels of literacy, the most important ingredients are the students at every level of education. Some university students are here today. The determined effort to acquire the discipline, the skills, the broad planning expertise, and to find the creative impulse, as well as insightful vision and networking and goodwill, to be part of the future of this country. So I'm particularly pleased to be able to welcome you to this conference where discussions will take place concerning the issues of immigration, emigration, refugees, hunger, malnutrition, territorial integrity, political independence, human rights, including the right that each human being has to the protection of his or her democratic entitlement. A great university must be a forum where the struggle for victory over collective agony can freely take place. welcome to the conference. Welcome to the session. Thank you.
Ibrahim has told me many times how badly I pronounce the Somali names and Arabic names. But I wanted the Imam from the mosque for praising Allah to come up and give us a blessing. It's Abdullah T. Faaruuq. He's the Imam.
Assalamu alaikum. First, I wish you peace, and I guess I'm being told to give some sort of invocation, but I think I'd rather give you a bit of a testimony. And why? Because I hold a very special connection, one that I hold very dear, with Somalian people. And that, first of all, I'm a human being like they are. And if I wasn't Muslim, like most of them are, I would still have a deep affection and concern for the problem that's going on now in their country. And I hold a very unique connection with them because I'm a Muslim, but I have a connection with them because now most of them that I know are Americans. They're here with me. I'm born in the Boston City Hospital, so that distinguishes me from their origins. But I'm also very, very concerned for their pain and suffering, this agony, because of this reason. I remember a long time ago, they used to have the Olympic newscast, and they used to say, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And many of you remember that? You remember that? However, in this case, I don't think that the Somalian people are defeated. As a matter of fact, I know they're not defeated. And I think that there, as the brother was saying, there's a great deal of hope for them. And it's my concern today as I give witness to the fact that I am Muslim, that there's nothing worthy of worship but Allah, the Almighty God, that created us all, white and black, American or Somalian. Wherever we come from, we are children of Adam and Eve. I want to put her there too, because we always say the children of Adam. But we are the children of Adam and Eve. And until the day comes that our world becomes a little bit more concerned with the fact that we are our Lord's children, and every pain that we see that goes on in the world should be a part of our pain if there's any humanity left in us. If there's any humanity. When I saw those, I could have well been one of those little children. And I know my people as an African American have met with a great deal of suffering at the hands of American people. I identify with the Somali people on this account as well. And I caution see, I'm glad to see there's so many people other than blacks and Somalis here, they're humans. I see some humans in the audience who have concerns for our humanity. Are we losing it? You know the expression, we're losing it? We are day by day losing our humanity because Somalia is not the only location in our globe in which this type of suffering is going on. The United States of America, of which I am a part and I claim citizenship here, glad to raise the furrows of the red, white, and blue, and claim my citizenship in this country, and also deeply ashamed of my leadership. The leadership that could make changes, but rather we spend $1 trillion exacting a war in Iraq that causes even more suffering to millions and millions of people. And yet we think that we are righteous. I call upon God Almighty today as I leave because I don't have a lot to say. I think that film might have said more than any one of us might be able to claim with words. And that we return to our humanity and hold out this cause, make it a celebrated cause amongst us so that we can carry this message to other people. That not only is Somalia in jeopardy, but rather the United States of America is in jeopardy and in deep trouble. Because we don't spread our wings of peace, but rather we become hawks all over the world. And as Jeremiah Wright said the other day, likening our Marines to the ancient, and our country to the ancient imperial Rome. We have as much power to do good as we to do evil. And as much power to alleviate pain as we are causing pain. I tell the Somalian people who are gathered here today, hold strong. Help is on the way. Allah promises to help the people who will help His cause. So now call upon Allah. We make prayer and we ask Allah for His help. But the way you get help is by helping His cause. Allah says if you help His cause, He will help you. And I say this to my non-Muslim friends and people who are gathered here today, to help the cause of God by doing good for your fellow man. These people are in suffering, and we can alleviate some of that pain just by spreading the message and putting pressure upon our government and upon our own, first of all, foremost, upon our own hearts. Take this pain that you see in this film, take it to be the pain that we hold as well. And don't go to bed so easily with a chuckle on your face and a smile with our stomachs full with food while theirs are bloated with air and unwanted stench from food that they just cannot find, and water. I ask Allah to help us. Allahumma rabbana fansurna. You know this word? Fansurna ala qawmin kafirin wal fansurna ala anfusina. Help us over disbelieving, oppressing people, but more so help us over our own souls. So thank you for your few moments to listen. And whoever put this thing together, keep on doing the good work. May Allah bless you.
And now we have our first presentation. I'm not the best of them, but we have, I want to call Ibrahim Imam, Safia Muhammad, and Muhammad Ahmed from up to the front, so they can sit up here to tell their story. Muhammad Hassan was born in Mogadishu. He's going to be our first speaker. He was born in Mogadishu in 1984. He's an active student with both the African Student Union and the Somali Student Association here at UMass. He's majoring in biology with history as a minor. The second speaker will be Ms. Sayed Muhammad, and she is a survivor of upheavals in Somalia, and she arrived in 1992, the first wave of refugees, and no penny, no relatives, no friends, and little English. That's a history of America, isn't it? So she's working right now with the Greater Boston communities. She's a board member of the Islamic Multi-Service Organization, and she's part of the Bilan American Community Development. She's now the president. She's a part-time student here at UMass Boston and lives in Roxbury with her family. And the last speaker will be Ibrahim Imam, a full-time student at Bunker Hill. And he's been an activist in the Somali community for years. And right now he's working on several educational projects to build infrastructure in the center of the Somali area and the rural regions. He's been a commentator for various online news organizations and an advisor for Somali Cause. He wants to see a united Somalia and one that learns from its past and pursues a governance of justice for all Somalis. With that, I will ask Muhammad to begin.
Bismillah. I'll be giving a brief history about Somalia. Somalia is located between Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. The Somali people are the most homogeneous people in the world, being part of the Kushite group. They speak the same language, have the same culture, and most significantly, more than 99% follow Sunni Islam. Before colonial era, Somalis were naturally pastoralists who moved about as nomads. although there were several centralized governments under the Sultanate system from the 13th century. During the partition of Africa, Somalia was divided into 5 regions. The Ogaden, which is western part, was given to Ethiopia. North was given to French Somaliland. The southernmost part was given to Kenya as its northeastern province. And the 2 Somalis that formed the republic were the British Somaliland and Italian Somaliland. Somalia had a very turbulent beginning since its independence, given part of the problem being the ambition of Somali people to unify those 5 regions. After independence, Somalia had a democracy for 9 years, and after the coup of 1969, 20 years of socialism and dictatorship prevailed, followed by the civil war. Current issues stemmed originally from the colonial era, in which the colonial powers magnified Somalia's clan system for the tactics of divide and rule through different treaties with different clan members, which created a lot of mistrust, which as it played out in the Civil War in 1991. As several people suggested several solutions, given our historically Somalis used to fight over land and resources, but they always managed to come to an agreement under a traditional open dialogue under a tree, no matter what the conflict was. There hasn't ever been a long and sustained conflict as such as what came out after the Civil War. Given that we are nomads and have a sense of brotherhoodness from traditions of Islam, and that it's also an enigma for most people why people with so many things in common can't find a solution. Another solution was to stop foreign intervention, especially Ethiopia and those who are financing the warlords to continue this strife. And one more suggestion was that we need a strong leadership that would unify the Somali clans and see these tactics as mere manipulation of the Somali people, that we have more in common than others would like to believe. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to talk about my story will be mostly personal, since many other people talk about the Somali channel. I grew up in my mother's and father's home in central Somalia, and I learned my family and nation's story as early age. That gives me happiness, pride, and of my identity. I grew up in a small town in central Somalia, and I thought everyone in this world knew my grandfather. Anyone who listened to this story could imagine the difference between where I grew up and where I am today. One day, elderly women in Boston asked me, where am I from? I say, I'm from Somalia. She says, Somalia? I asked her, do you know where is that? She said, yes, I know, it's close to Brazil. I was the primary caregiver of my 120 years old grandfather. In our culture, it's blessed to be the last primary caregiver of the parents, and I was blessed to inherit that blessing. My mother was very happy in Mogadishu. She had mother, father, 6 brothers, 2 sisters, 3 children, and over 7 nieces and nephews. Somalia has patrilineal culture that was there was a war between my mother and my father's tribe. In Somali culture, anyone belongs to father's tribe. For that reason, no matter who we love or who we look like, our loyalty doesn't change. As I was my father's child, I belonged to my father's tribe, and that was why I couldn't stay with my own maternal grandfather during the Civil War. Short time after the war started in the capital city of Somalia, Mogadishu, people were starting moving different directions based on one tribe. Our tribe moved to the south of Mogadishu, and the other tribe moved to the north of Mogadishu. My mother was caught in a very painful situation between who to choose. Her children, father, mother, brother, sister, and finally her tribe. She had to decide whether to stay with her tribe, include her mother and father, or whether she should move with her 3 children, 2 daughters and 1 son. My uncles, my mother's brother, loved us so much, and they did not want us to go. There were so many debates between my mother and her family. My mother insisted to take us out of Mogadishu to save us. Unfortunately, my brother was killed a few months after his graduation at Agriculture University in Somalia. Few months after my mother made her decision to visit her sick father, but she had to cross many roadblocks and tribal borders to see her father. She was unable to reach in Mogadishu until a week after the death of her father. And then she has to make arrangements to take her mother out of Mogadishu to save her place. My grandmother died in a few months after she left Mogadishu. My uncles called to my mother to grieve with her for the loss of their mother because they couldn't go to where my mother was. After my mother and her brother stayed a week together in Mogadishu, my mother was getting ready to go back to central Somalia, but her 2 brothers were killed in the same day in the same place. She went to the site of their death, but she was unable to identify neither of them. Less than 2 years, I have 25 relatives from my immediate to extended family have been died. I lost my brother, grandfather, mother, and grandmother, uncle, aunties, and cousins. 23 of those deaths were from gunshot, and that's why I never bought toy gun or water gun for my children. From 1991 to date, members of my family have been missing. I have so much to tell with so little time to talk. Without the external interferences, Somali war wouldn't last a year. Ethiopian troops have been present in Somalia as early as 1991. They backed all the Somali warlords to make sure none of the warlords would ever run out of the weapon, keeping confusion, violence, destruction, and the death in motion, with no winner, only losers. Many Somali nationalists talked about the Ethiopian intervention, but Ethiopia continuously denied being inside of Somalia border until they won the new jackpot, and the name of that jackpot is war. War on Terror. 1993, United States Army killed thousands of Somali civilians to capture one individual, Mohammed Farah Aidi. Operation Restore Hope ended with the death of thousands of innocent Somali civilians and 18 American with no established base. That time, we as a Somali knew who America was looking for, but this time we do not know who they're looking for. We do not know that we only know that American government is fully backing up Ethiopian army to kill or catch what they call terrorists. But instead of looking for terrorists, Ethiopia took this as a golden opportunity to destroy whole Somali nation, to kill thousands of innocent children, women, elders, displaced 1.5 million of Mogadishu residents. Today, those voiceless victims have no name other than terrorists. There is a running joke in Somalia among the people live in the poor community. If once someone says, I'm broke, the other person will say, if you are broke, then you need to write proposal to the United States government telling them there is terrorists hiding out somewhere in Somalia, then money will come. I'm sure if American citizens will use the fact of the pain and poverty, displacement of the people of Mogadishu, they will do something about it. I'm sure if they will use as little as 2% of this pain and the suffering of the people of Somalia, they will do something about it. I'm sure if American learned of the poor man who lost his family, his house, his 5 children, his pregnant wife, and his father-in-law in the same night, because of Ethiopian army indiscriminately shielding his community, and many others like his American citizens will do something about it. We're only responsible for what we know. You have been informed about the agony in the Somalia, and I'm asking you to learn and do something about it. Our peace environment initiative in the Somali movement is still on, and we will never fail. We will fight for our freedom and will stand for our right, and Somalia will never surrender to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is our historical enemy, and I never thought the United States will ask Ethiopia to be represented for the American interest. They're not represented, no American interest, neither Somali interest, but their own interest, destroying and destruction of these innocent and civilians. Thank you for your attention and time.
Good morning, everybody. Peace be upon you. Alaikum salam. I'll be brief, and actually I'll present my side of the story, which is quite testimonial on what happened in Somalia. I was around 15 years of age when I was shot. But my story begins with the family, who are very much the average people in Somalia, mostly impoverished. But with that sense of impoverishment and so forth, Somalia enjoyed a peace that has been one of the integral parts that actually was the key in 1980s. There's a newsletter that I read about in 1980s, 1970s. Somalia was the most peaceful country in the world, despite what we hear today in the documentaries, that it's one of the most violent countries in the world today. So, given that context, I was shot one day in Somalia. And I spent in the hospital for nearly 2 years in the peak of the civil strife in Somalia in 1992. So the bullet that hit me was seen to be one thing that is very much manageable comparing to what other people are actually, having, the shelling, the things that dismember, the people's body, the big, gangs, bullets, so forth and so on. But, my case was each and every time, because with the minimal resources in the hospital, each and every time I get operated, my health condition becomes complicated. And there was a time when the surgeries surpassed the 7. There's an American doctor who came with the Red Cross and who operated me and explained the implications of the wounds to my mother through a translator. And because at that time, when I was taken from the operation room, I was in state of anesthesia. And my mother told me then, when I recovered, she said, Ibrahim, because I used to like sports, soccer, to play soccer, and she said, Ibrahim, this is the 7th surgery. The doctor told me, because I was not convinced, because I have this hope that I will recover and play sports again and become, active in the community. And she said, Ibrahim, what happened to you will have a future, impact. Not in the mental aspect, but in your physical, on what you used to do, and so on and so on. And I said, my mom, how can that be, conceivable? How can that be true? She said, the doctor told me. And I became quiet a few seconds. I said, what about the medical happiness? Somewhere and somehow I recover and do what I used to do. And because of that belief in understanding that there's always a way out. Actually, when I watched these documentaries, it touched me in a direct way because that has been the norm in Somalia, and it's more than that, considering the violence and the war that took place in Somalia. What's happening today is unprecedented. I just want to conclude my story with this. Last week I was listening to the BBC, and as you know, the BBC, they have a Somali section that broadcasts that specializes the region in the East Africa, especially in Somalia, in the major events that are happening. And there was a war between the Ethiopian and the groups that opposed the Ethiopian president in Somalia. And this war, because each and every time there's a war, the Ethiopians who are mainly located in places where it used to be the hospitals, who has been transformed as a military barracks, they start to bombard the city. And this family of 7 members got a shelling in their house, 7 in the morning as they wake up. The father and the mother died, 2 sons died, and the 5 children were severely wounded and taken to the hospital. So when I hear those kind of stories, it really frustrates me. And I know everyone in America, especially my friends and like Professor Camacho, which I usually speak with, and tell about the stories of Somalia. It's very heart-wrenching. It's even so inconceivable for American people to imagine that is happening. That's a reality. But as we, bring those stories to the American people to share with you, it really leaves us a question. Are we happy? Are we okay for that to continue? Since we care about the people, since a lot of things that the Americans believe as a value is also true with what we believe as the Somalians. It's something that binds us, a humanity, a value that goes beyond nationality and beyond. So think about that and make sure it's something that is so present, which begs our attention and action to bring about a lasting change about the agony and the misery that the Somali people are facing, not through the Ethiopian hands, but through policies that has been crafted and exported from this part of the world. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
We're just a bit behind time, but I wanted to give the audience at any time they wanted for some questions and comments about what the speakers have to say. If anyone has some questions, well, so you can, Sonny?
Tell me, what do you see as a resolve or possibility of a peaceful solution to what is going on right now in Somalia, but generally, but Mogadishu particularly, and what is being done, if you know, to release the funds that have been frozen in Somalia?
For the first part, and he'll answer the second part. Naturally, there's a fabrication that there's deep rifts between clans. Historically, this Somali people are very, they are very, traditionally they have common backgrounds, but the things that are, they say the conflicts between clan system is something that just was manufactured during the Civil War. And if the Somali people are given the chance to have a dialogue between each other, I think we can come to an understanding that, because as we've seen from the Islamic courts, what Somali people really are striving for, especially nowadays, is to have peace, to have a government and to have peace. But that's what is moving people. But for every conflict, there are beneficiaries, and the warlords who benefit from the chaos are preventing everything with the aid of Ethiopia to halt the formation of a central government.
Does that answer your question?
I'm sorry?
That's
Well, the funding.
Does it pertain to the funding?
I did ask the question as to what is being done to get the funding in the banks released that are being placed on.
Oh, I wasn't that much paying attention. But actually,
If you know.
Al-Barakat, I was following the news from here. Actually, Al-Barakat, in my personal experience, are not a terrorist organization. To be honest with you, there is a story that happened right here in Boston. Actually, in Dorchester, there was a small branch of Al-Barakat that was actually the first, the raid that after the presidential, executive order, the first, branch was in Dorchester, and at the time was 2002, I believe, when it was raided. 2 days ago, I sent my brother, who was in Egypt at the time, money. So the second day, after 2 days, I was in my house, and I was tuning to the NBR, and I met John Ashcroft, the president, and someone from the State Department saying, breaking news, we catch the terrorists, the place they fund the money, and so on and so on. And actually the community from Somali community in Boston get together. And the guy they arrested was Somali, but originally from Canada. And then after after the case was taken to the court, he became innocent. So it's those kind of allegations that end up ultimately as bogus information, just to probably serve some kind of something as an reflect about the.
We're gonna start. I know it's gonna happen. We're at the time. I'd like you three to stay here, sit where you are, and I'd like to invite Bashir, Khalif, Sudi, the principal speaker, to come up, and then we'll roll the questions in again. Mr. Sudi is an information technology consultant, and he lives in the DC area. He has a master's in systems engineering, and it was in 1993 that he helped a conference in Ottawa, Canada, about the UN involvement in Somalia assemble. And that's included a number of UN figures. So he is currently an advisor for Somali advocacy organizations, and he has a number of projects he's trying to do in Somalia. And I'd like you all to welcome Mr. Bashir Khalif Sudi.
Yes, I can just go walk over here.
So why don't we, while they're trying to hook this up, why don't you try that?
You know what, I'll just go ahead and read from here, and I'll basically, there are a couple of photographs that I want to show at the end, but other than that, I'll give you the flashcard then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Basically means peace upon you. I'll start out with answering Senator Owen's question about the funding. The Barakat offices that were raided here in the United States, every single one of them, the funds were released. Every single one. The funds were released. But a lot of the funds, the headquarters was in Dubai. So what happened is every single night, each branch has to wire whatever amount of money that came in on that day. So usually it's about $50,000, $70,000 for each branch across the United States, across Europe to Dubai. When the United States put the block on, when it labeled Al-Barakat as a terrorist organization, the bank transfer system, the SWIFT system that goes through Brussels and Belgium, froze some money that was in transit. The majority of the money that was in transit, and whatever was in Dubai was also frozen in Dubai. Unfortunately, the legal system in Dubai is not like here in the United States, where you can demand proof. Because of political pressure, Dubai is not saying that that Al-Barakat is terrorist, but the funding is still frozen due to the request by the United States. The Treasury Department went there, went through the files, could not find anything, not a dime that went to terrorists. In fact, as Ibrahim was saying, on the day this was announced, it was the quartermasters of Al-Qaeda were captured. We know where the funding is coming from. We've frozen it, and there were raids across the United States. But quietly, the funds were released. The offices were reopened under different names now. So that's the status. The owner of Al-Barakat, the biggest shareholder, because it's got a lot of shareholders, who was in the video, lives in Djibouti now. Dubai kicked him out of the country, again, at the request of the United States. He lives in Djibouti. He makes these calls for, he says that the 9/11 Commission said that there was no basis to say that Al-Barakat was a terrorist organization. But again, he doesn't have the wherewithal because of his funding was totally frozen. Once you're in the list, you cannot, you cannot make deals with anybody. So getting a lawyer to even, unless he gets the ACLU or somebody like that to help him out, even getting a lawyer to get into this kind of case is very difficult. So the money is frozen for all practical purposes.
Still frozen.
It's still frozen.
Frozen.
Yeah. I'll start out with a brief 2-minute background, just my motivation on why I'm involved in this. I graduated from university in Somalia free of charge at the expense of the Somali taxpayers. And I was an assistant lecturer at the university, engineering department. So I feel that I owe my fellow Somalis something. So I'm putting in extra hours outside my work for advocacy right now because of that. On the other hand, I came to the United States on a scholarship by the African American Institute. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Again, debt-free. Somebody picked up that tab. So I feel indebted that I should, again, contribute by making sure that the United States is not hated in Somalia. Many times the media does not really cover Somalia that much. How many of you have seen this in the regular media? Rarely. You would rarely see anything on Somalia. It's Darfur, Zimbabwe, and then you also hear about Tibet. During the Tibet crisis recently, maximum 150 people were killed, maximum. But you've seen the kind of coverage it got. In Zimbabwe, 2 people were killed during the election uprising, or the problems that they had during the elections. 2 people. That in Somali terms is basically, on a weekly basis, it's between 50 to 80 people that are killed. 50 to 80 people. So you can see the difference, and there's no coverage. One quick story on the coverage. Channel 4 in England had a piece, I don't know if it was in the video you just saw, Somalis demonstrating. There was a woman that says, it's Bush's fault. He misunderstands Somalia. He thinks Islam is terrorist. When PBS covered that, Jim Lehrer show, when they covered that, that piece was removed. So you saw everything else about the demonstration. You saw everything else about what was happening in Somalia. It was warlords fighting, Somalis fighting against themselves, Ethiopians fighting against Somalis, not a mention of the United States. Then they had 2 experts discuss the issue, and towards the end, the last few minutes, the last few seconds, and was asked, so what's the role of the United States in this? See, so the American public does not know what's going on. And there is no way, if the American public knew what was going on in Somalia, that this government, this administration, could continue doing what it does. Somalia right now is in the portfolio of clandestine operations. It's the Pentagon and the CIA that are running the show. The State Department steps up there to put a good face on whatever happens, but they really do not know or are not in control of what's going on. So the question is, when did the United States have an interest in Somalia? Unfortunately, if Obama becomes president, I don't think much will change, because his advisor, Susan Rice, was President Clinton's Undersecretary for African Affairs, Assistant Undersecretary for African Affairs. And in 1998, again on PBS, she was asked about the fighting between Eritrea and Ethiopia. 1998. Nothing happened in East Africa. Nobody knew anything called Al-Qaeda at that time. 1998. So when she was asked about what the US was doing about stopping the war between Eritrea and Ethiopia, who were both US allies, she gave a long explanation of the efforts they put in trying to stop the war. And then, as Jim Lehrer usually asks, he says, why should the American public care about this? So why are we involved? And this was very interesting to me. I mean, this is a quote, you can get the transcript if you Google it. So when she was asked, what's our interest? She said, these two countries were the linchpin in our containment policy against the instability emanating from fundamentalists in Sudan and Somalia. Now, Sudan has a government. You can understand that it could be a threat. But Somalia at that time was a threat to itself, but was not a threat to the United States, was not a threat to the region. But that was the spin that she had put. So from that point, you could see in 1998 there was a containment policy. Once 2001, September 11 occurred, Somalia was in the focus. Fox News was now saying the first attack against the US was Al-Qaeda's attack in Mogadishu. We never heard about that in 1993. But that was the spin that was given. Once that occurred, then basically Somalia, through the Bush administration's point of view, was war and terror, get some terrorists. And again, in 2001, the United States claims there was a bombing in Kenya and Tanzania of the U.S. embassy in both capitals. Not a single Somali was involved. In Kenya, those involved were the Kenyans. Those involved in Tanzania were Tanzanians. There was a Comoran national that was also accused of being involved. But there wasn't a single Somali that was involved. But guess what? Somalia was blamed for it. So the argument was that they fled to Somalia. Nothing happened. But in 2001, the US foreign policy towards Somalia was just one simple sentence: bounty hunters.
I'm sorry.
Bounty hunters. That was it. The policy was not complicated. You pay the warlords, the same warlords that were involved in killing American troops in 1993. Same warlords were now being paid millions of dollars to bring in terrorists. If you don't have terrorists, what do? You manufacture them. So there was a booming business of kidnapping Somalis, religious Somalis, and especially light-skinned Somalis, who would fit the category of being an Arab, were being, I'm serious, would be kidnapped. There was a couple of private airports on the two sides of the city. They would be taken out, some would be taken to Malindi in Kenya, others would be taken to Djibouti. They would be kept there for 2-3 months to be debriefed. And when nothing comes up, the US hands them over to the warlord. Sometimes they get lucky, they come back alive. And other times the warlord, not wanting repercussion from the clan of that particular victim, the person will not make it back. End of story. So there was this issue of bounty hunting that was going on in Somalia. And of course it created a lot of resentment, it created a lot of hatred. That was 2001 until 2006. Again, if there were terrorists that were hiding in Somalia, why was the US not so interested in supporting the transitional federal government that was created in Kenya in 2004? The US was totally disinterested because they knew that the government was dysfunctional. And the US knew that. They were not interested. They were dealing with the warlords. Around 1999, obviously when people have a lot of problems, they find local solutions. So in Somalia, one of the problems was, if I'm from a particularly well-armed clan, a numerous clan, and I happen to be a criminal, I kill people, I rob people, it's dangerous for my victims to fight back because should they kill me, my clan may retaliate. So some of the bigger clans then started forming Islamic courts that were geared to only that clan, which basically meant if they captured somebody who was from their clan, who was a criminal, or they had complaints coming to them about a certain member of their clan, then they would go and get hold of that person. Should the person get injured or killed during the operation, there would be no clan fighting because it's his own clan that went to go get him. That's how the Islamic court started. It was very small. And then around 2000, 2002, they formed a union in Mogadishu because Clan A may capture a criminal from Clan B, but to have fairness in the trial, that clan, the person would be sent to his clan's court to be judged and for punishment to be met out. So the Islamic courts came along that way. There were some in the Islamic courts who did not believe in the clan or the tribal issues, but they were being pragmatic. This was one way of stopping a lot of crime. The warlords tolerated because the Islamic courts were too weak, first of all, to attack them, and they were big stuff, and so they coexisted. What happened in 2006 to bring about the major fight between the warlords and the Islamic courts? You'd be surprised. Two businessmen fought over a scrub of land that is worthless. Scrub of land. It's not good farming area. It's not in the middle of the city. One businessman was allied with Islamic courts, but the two of them were basically business partners. They ran a port together. Wanted to build warehouses at a junction that came from the port and from an airport. That was where the two roads met. So he wanted to have a warehouse there to facilitate his business. The other businessman who ran the airport on his own saw this as a threat to him. Second businessman, who was also named Bashir, had ties with the CIA. So when they fought over the land, he had a CIA team that landed at his airport, and when they heard the gunfire, and this is in the Washington Post, it's all in the Washington Post, when they had, when the fighting started, the CIA were told, hey, these guys won't kill you, they're working for Al-Qaeda guys. They flew back to Nairobi, they called the businessmen, they told them, we'll put you in the terrorist list. Your file will be sent to Washington. So he sent his son, he sent his brother to go and negotiate with the Americans to tell them, hey, we're not fighting with you. This was a business deal gone bad. We're fighting over land. It has nothing to do with the United States. He had the clan elders meet, try to negotiate between them. It failed. Then the clan issued a statement saying to the United States, please stay out of this. This is an internal clan issue. And then the businessman, because he was afraid that was tied with the United States, was afraid that the Islamic courts would support his rival, formed, with the other warlords, formed an anti-terrorism and restoration of democracy alliance, February 18th. The day it was formed, the next day, fighting started out in Mogadishu. February 18th, and the fighting went on until June, first week of June. And for the first time, the Islamic courts were too weak by themselves to remove the warlords. But once the fighting started, there was a genuine grassroots uprising. In Somalia, one of the ways to project your power, our aircraft carriers are the technicals. So these are pickup trucks where you have 20 young kids and an anti-aircraft gun mounted on it, and you're able to fight in multiple places because it's you can move it from point A to point B, continue fighting there. And for the public then, the general public then, because they knew the warlords were more powerful, to stop them started creating barricades across the city. So one warlord could not send in technicals to help another warlord during the fight. Eventually, by June, the warlords lost, and the Islamic courts captured the whole city. What was the difference? I think the video sort of covered what the public got out of it, which was basically property was being returned. It didn't matter what clan you were. It didn't matter whether you were rich or poor. If somebody was squatting on your property, now you had a place to go. You would go to the Islamic courts, and they would bring out archives. They would bring out witnesses. I mean, it was really fair. People started coming back from overseas. There are 2 flights that come from 2 airlines, I think, or maybe 3, that fly from Dubai to Somalia. It was overbooked. You had to wait a month to go to Somalia. A lot of people were making plans then to go and visit relatives that they had not seen for a long time. That was the 6-month period when the Islamic courts were in charge. I will tell you one brief story about how the kind of humility they showed. On a radio show, Ibrahim Abdullah, the professor from American University that you saw on the video, along with one Islamic court official were on the radio, and they were talking about meetings that they'd come back from in Khartoum. And the mayor of the city, who was named by the TFG, by the Transitional Federal Government, that the Islamic courts did not recognize, but they coexisted, was in the city. And they were asked eventually, why aren't you guys building the administration for the city? People have been waiting, it's been 3 months. There has been no administration. Do you guys want to usurp that power? What's going on? Because the Islamic courts had the civil societies, the human rights organizations that were supporting them. So the questioner that was asking, are you guys trying to run the thing on your own? And the other official said, a Somali parable, which was that the pig and the wild pig and the wolf argued about who is more pretty. And they asked the elephant to be the judge. And he said, the judge, and before they gave him the right to adjudicate, they said, the pig said, if you say that I'm ugly, I'm going to stumble, I'm going to destroy your grazing area. And the wolf said, I'll eat your children if you say I'm the ugly one. So basically what he was saying is there are different interests in the city that are telling us if we do not allow them to run the show, that they will harm us in one way or the other. But in Somalia, pigs and wolves or dogs are really considered to be derogatory. So the mayor of the city called in. Of course, he was one of the protagonists. He was one of the people that was laying claim to running the city. So he called and said, who are you calling a pig? Who are you calling, this was an analogy, but he took it literally saying, who are you calling a pig? Who are you calling a dog? Is it me? Is it my clan? Or is it the other clans that are in the city? Who are you calling this? The Larry King equivalent in Somalia found a good opportunity to have another show. So he said, hey, the show, we're running out of time. Do you guys want to arrange another show where we can have this discussion? Professor Abdullah then said, no. I work with the mayor on a daily basis. We meet on a daily basis. And he says, I'm appealing to you. Can we discuss this offline? Can we resolve this? If you're not happy with our resolution, then we will have the debate that you want on the radio. showing that the next day, the official who made that remark came on the radio and apologized, said, and it never happened in Somalia that a leader, somebody in the corridors of power would come on the radio and say, I was wrong. I apologize, that was not my intention. I did not mean to insult anybody. I was trying to give an example, but I apologize. So these were the kind of things that endeared the Islamic courts to the public. Obviously, that's not what the United States saw. The United States quickly formed the International Contact Group, who are incidentally meeting either today or tomorrow in Norway. The International Contact Group was quickly formed to legitimize the government. They met the first time they met, they said, we recognize and we will work with the transitional federal institutions in Somalia. Incidentally, Norway, the home of the Nobel Peace Prize, has been involved in what has happened in Somalia. It has been used as a cover in what has happened in Somalia. So, the International Contact Group was quickly formed, comprising Norway, United Kingdom, Italy, the United States, and Tanzania. Why Tanzania was chosen, I don't know. But the United States decided to put them there. Kofi Annan, who was the UN Secretary General at that time, spoke up and said, I hope this new group is not being formed to support the warlords. And John Bolton, who was the ambassador at that time, quickly responded and said, are you accusing the United States? That was his response. So anyway, the bottom line was the International Contact Group was created as an alternative to the United Nations system. So they would hold meetings every 4 months or 6 months and try to guide the policy of the international community towards Somalia. So the Islamic courts were in power for 6 months, but what happened was the transitional federal president, President Abdullah Yusuf, who was one of the warlords and a client of the Ethiopian government, asked for peacekeeping forces from the neighboring countries. The Somali parliament, filled with a lot of, the majority of whom are basically nominated by the warlords, refused. It was split in half. They had a fist fight in the middle of the parliament. They could not agree on that. Half the parliamentarians went to Mogadishu, half went to Baidoa. Johor, actually. Johor, half went to Johor. So, to make a long story short, the government was divided over bringing in Ethiopia, which has a lot of... The easiest way to tell an American is, it's like the president going to Moscow and saying, please send us some peacekeeping troops to bring peace in New York. Unimaginable, right? So that was the kind of relationship where the president was saying we want Ethiopian troops in Somalia. There were talks that were held in Khartoum, whereby the United States was involved as an observer. So the Islamic courts and the transitional federal government had talks. The talks did not really succeed. They were planning to have a final set of talks, but Ethiopia intervened. December 2006, Ethiopia, on a blitz, within 2 to 3 weeks, captured all of Somalia. But the New York Times reported later on that there were American special forces that fought alongside them. That American reconnaissance was providing tactical information to the Ethiopians. To Somalis, this was all well known, because if you're in Somalia, it's the norm to hear the drones and the planes flying over. And to a lot of people, it may be, well, if you're not doing something wrong, no problem, right? But the problem in that kind of reasoning is, it has happened at least 3 times now, where the United States bombed villages in Somalia and announcing that they had killed terrorist A, terrorist B, terrorist C, names, so and so and so and so. And then they would send in special forces, get some DNA, turns out it was some poor nomad. Didn't know anything about what was going on and was not involved. So, of course, nobody goes back and says, well, didn't you say this? Again, the media doesn't cover this. Congressman Donald Payne and Senator Feingold have been asking questions. Unfortunately, they do not have the kind of support that Darfur has in the Congress. So while they're trying to raise the issue, and the funny thing is, the 1 year now that Ethiopia has been in Somalia, 800,000 people have fled the city, living in kind of abodes that you've seen. I wouldn't even call them a house, but the kind of makeshift tents that they were living in outside the city. 800,000 people. You have over 8,000 to 10,000 people that have been directly killed by the fight. Again, when we say directly killed, in Darfur you hear that 200,000 people have been killed. The way that is counted is not necessarily somebody that's killed by a bullet. If you're fleeing and along the way you die because you did not have medical attention, that will be counted as a cause of death. In Somalia, it's only those who are killed right then and there. If you've been wounded and you die in hospital a day later, you're not being counted. The other thing is Somali victims, the families would bury them right away. So even the collection system of statistics is not that reliable. A lot of victims are not being accounted for because if you die right now, they will not wait until sundown. You'll be buried right away. A recent incident that occurred about 10 days ago, Ethiopian troops were ambushed in a particular neighborhood. And there was a big mosque there belonging to the Tabligh Sufi sect. Non-violent, they're akin to, I mean, the easiest way, again, to give you an analogy would be the Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, what they basically do is they go around knocking on people's doors saying, come to your faith, come to your belief, you know. That's basically all. They do not have a political platform, they do not have an armed wing. That's the Tabligh, and the word itself means to convey a message. So the Ethiopian troops, when they were ambushed, went into a mosque. And they used the people who were in the mosque, of the Tabligh mosque, as hostages. They released some women, and the women came out and told the fighters, basically, that there are children in there. There are other women there. They've killed the men, but there are women and children in there. Please cease the fire. When the fighting stopped, the Imam of the Tabligh movement, along with his deputy, were killed. And 19 other people were also killed there, men. 7 of whom had their throats slit. Amnesty International reported on this. 41 children, 7, 8, 9 years old, up to 16, 17 years old, were abducted by the Ethiopians. What was their answer when Amnesty condemned this, when they were asked by the media? They said, they're going through interrogation. If we find them not to be terrorists, we will release them. These are kids that were in a masjid, in a mosque, learning the Quran, and now they're terrorists, or being investigated as being terrorists. These kind of incidents are not heard by the American public. The State Department was asked about this, and the answer was Orwellian, to say the least. It was Orwellian. The answer was, we will continue to support the transitional federal government, we will continue to support Ethiopians to bring peace and stability to Somalia. Peace and stability. When we went to see Senator Feingold, and his staff and him agreed with us on everything, but the question they asked was, well, if we, as you're demanding, if we ask the Ethiopians to immediately withdraw, then what? Who's going to fill the vacuum? There's going to be a security vacuum. For whom? Security vacuum for whom? Not for the Somalis, because it's the Ethiopian occupation force that's causing a lot of the death and tragedy for them. But maybe it's for the interests of the United States, of neighboring countries. For them, maybe there is going to be a vacuum. But for the Somalis, the last 16 months have been the worst. Have been worse than combining the past 16 years. The firepower that has been used, the indiscriminate shelling that has occurred, and all this to support who? I mean, I will conclude this briefly, but just to give you a quick background on the president. November 20th in Baidoa, that's the temporary capital, he gave a speech to the permanent secretaries of the government. It was a long speech, and in it, the statements that he makes, by the way, they've been translated and you can find them in somalitalk.com. He lays out the plan and he explains to you why the largest market in the country has been shelled and destroyed. So he asks these ministers and permanent secretaries, the Minister of Economy and the head of the central bank, do you control currency values or anything to do with money in the country? No. Who controls it? The Hawalas. And who are they? They're allied with the Islamic courts. They are our enemies. Okay. Who controls the telecommunication system? The enemy. Who controls the schools? The enemy. Who controls the healthcare clinics? There's a Minister of Health. He doesn't have, except a deputy minister, he doesn't have any infrastructure to conduct policy. So he's not involved with vaccination. He's not involved with providing primary healthcare services. These are done by privately owned clinics. And those are the ones that was previously said that the Ethiopians are now using as military bases. They also ransacked the Swedish, I think, Institute Save Our Souls at Saws Village. There was a clinic there. That was also ransacked recently, less than 10 days ago. So the president said, who's running the healthcare system? Not you guys, it's been run by the enemy. He said, the aid organizations, they're the real government. For 17 years, they decide what happens in Somalia. They're not recognizing us. We will not work with them. So he says, what are they doing now? They're distributing food in the mosques. Again, to terrorists. If you're in the United States and you want to have a feeding program, where would you go? Most likely you'll go to church, right? Churches have all these feeding programs and a church-affiliated organization have this. In Somalia, it's the mosques. They're the ones that can do that. But the president is accusing aid organizations that are predominantly Western of giving food and mosques to support terrorists. Then he talks about the control of the businesses in general. He concludes then and says, so what should we do about this? He said, they are my enemy, they're your enemy, let's seize power from them. This is the president who's being supported by the United States. Now that I've given you a litany of all the problems that exist in Somalia, what can we do? What is the solution? I was thrown off by the question by Senator Bill Owens, but I wanted to start out with what we would like to see in Somalia. What we would like to see in Somalia is a situation where one man, one vote, where the majority, respecting the minority, would have a say in how the country is run. Not by a few warlords, not by foreign interests. That is the kind of future that we would like for Somalia. Why would this be of interest to the United States? It would be of interest to the United States because in the long run, a Somalia that is free and democratic will not be an enemy to the United States. There are at least 100,000 Somalis that live in the United States who are dual citizens. So there's no way that Somalia would become an enemy to the United States if free and fair elections and democracy is allowed to flourish. Right now, that is not the policy we have in place. So we, the Somali community here in North America, are trying to do our best. I mean, I've never worked in a, unfortunately I didn't have the experience where Trans-Africa and other folks who have worked to get rid of the apartheid system. So we're learning and we're making mistakes as we move along, but we need a lot of help. We need help from student activists, we need help from George Clooney, and we need help from Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times, talks all the time about Darfur, about other problems around the world. We've sent him emails, we've tried to contact him. Somalia is too embarrassing. Somalia is too embarrassing because it's not the Chinese you're going to be blaming. It's not the Sudanese you're going to be blaming. It is too painful. And maybe he's afraid of being called an un-American. And so it's easier to talk about Darfur. It's easier to talk about the Chinese, those evil Chinese. But in Somalia, it's not the Chinese that are giving the weapons to the Ethiopians. By the way, again, this is another interesting fact. The Ethiopians have Russian armaments. And when they wanted to invade Somalia, they needed spare parts for their tanks. Guess where they got it from? North Korea. And at this time, at the time when they made the deal, the United States had pushed through the United Nations an arms embargo that the North Koreans could not be traded with, specifically to do with arms. But they were given a waiver. I do not know, but probably U.S. aid was also used in buying those weapons. So we need the help. We need all the help we can get. If we can find people that would work with us in contacting congressmen and helping us with, as I said, we're novices to this. We try to deal with the media, but we make more mistakes than good shots. So if we can have help, we would love all the help we can get. If we can find the kind of student activism that exists in this campus for Darfur, for example. I'm not minimizing, when I'm repeating Darfur, I'm not minimizing what's happening in Darfur. But I find it a little bit, either people do not know about Somalia, that's the best case scenario, or it's very hypocritical because you cannot say that you are against the bombing of innocents in villages because rebels happen to be there, and then be for it in Somalia. To say, okay, let's have carpet bombing because the rebels are there. And the president, Somali president, said this on the Voice of America, that we will shell any neighborhood where a bullet is fired at us. And the interviewer asked him, but what if civilians are there? He said, so what? We will shell even though. He said, if the civilians want to have peace, they should get rid of the rebels from their neighborhoods. Rebels that he can't get rid of, he's asking the civilians to get rid of. So, in conclusion, the solution lies mostly here in Washington, in the United States. We can convince the United States government, the United States Congress to change the U.S. policy towards Somalia. It's almost like what happened with Iraq. The only difference is, with Iraq, we had cameras all over the place. There was discussion about every single evidence that turned out to be false was discussed. In the case of Somalia, nothing is discussed. Nothing. Just before the Ethiopians were allowed to go into Somalia, the United Nations had an arms embargo report on Somalia. The things that were said were Iranians were getting uranium from central Somalia when the Islamic courts were in charge. 2,000 Eritreans were in Mogadishu fighting alongside the Islamic courts. There were thousands of Arabs that were fighting in Mogadishu alongside the Islamic courts. None of that happened. There may have been one or two foreigners that were fighting there. But a number of Somalis of European origin, of European citizenship, who went back to Somalia during the peaceful time in the Islamic courts, were arrested by the Ethiopians, and one in particular, Bashir Makhtal, is still in Ethiopian prison because his grandfather was a well-known activist for liberation of the Somali region of Ethiopia. What is his crime? His name and the fact that he had a foreign passport. So he was one of those foreign fighters. He was not involved in any fighting. He had gone back to visit family. So I wanted to conclude with, there's a lot of folks, especially the United Nations, that say we have to have peacekeeping troops in there. We need to send peacekeeping. There are 2,500 African Union troops in Mogadishu. They have not prevented any crime occurring in Somalia. They are at the airport and they're at the seaport. But that's about it. 800,000 people have been displaced. They haven't done anything. Foreign forces have not had a good history in Somalia. And I'm just going to show you two pictures. I was in Canada when we had this situation. Again, I don't know if people here are aware of it. When there were United Nations forces in Somalia, people know about the incident about Somalis dragging American mines. But what is not known is that Canadian troops, some of the most well-trained, most well-disciplined peacekeeping troops that the United Nations has, were involved in beating and torturing to death a Somali youth of about 15-year-old. Then they took trophy pictures of their killing him. I was going to show you one of those trophy pictures. Belgian troops who were placed in the port city of Kismayo took a Somali youth and had a fire lit and they were roasting him. I mean, they were swinging him left to right, right? So when he gets close to the fire, obviously he gets hurt. Anyway, so those were incidents that occurred. The Canadians in Beledweyne, they had a game where they would make an opening on their fence. It's an open field, and then they would place clothes, foods, something to trap somebody. So somebody would be passing by Somali, they would see clothes there, they would see some goods there, and they decide to steal it. They go in there, there's somebody 100 meters away practicing to shoot them. There was a competition of how many of these folks you could shoot, to say the least. So, haven't we learned the lesson that peacekeeping troops are not the answer? The answer was the local solution that we had. If the United States has some concerns, Professor Addo, I don't know if he said that in the program, but the first thing the Islamic Course did was they wrote a letter to the State Department. They said, we are not giving any protection to any terrorist, but if you have that concern, please come visit us here. Let's look for them, right? Jendai Frazier, the Undersecretary for African Affairs, when we met her, said, this was something that you guys over here wrote. They don't believe it, but it's you guys here in the diaspora that have written them for them. So I will conclude with that the solution lies with a change in policy from the United States. And I appeal to you, I appeal to your humanity, I appeal to your conscience. Do the least that you can. Thank you.
We're a tad over time, and I don't know what people's, we have some food there, and I know we want some Q&A, but Barbara, did you want to make any comments?
No, just that I think that for me what this shows is that we need to do more of this, and so I'd like to meet with you later and talk about it.
All right. Can I call before the Q&A? Senator, would you want to make some remarks and then trigger the Q&A again? I don't know how your time is.
Yeah, a couple things I'd like to say. And I think you can probably hear me.
Yeah.
We have a great concern about what is going on in Somalia. A young woman told me that during the Civil War, in her attempt to escape, she had 5 children of her own, and 2 of her family's children. I believe she was 25 at the time, and she was able to somehow get into Ethiopia, not Ethiopia. No, not Kenya. To Egypt. Get into Egypt, where she got stuck for a longish period of time, and said that she was 5 years older than 25 because it didn't seem reasonable that she should have 7 children at the age that she was. She finally did get out of Egypt, and she got into Canada. The reason I told that little story is that there is a terrible thing that is going on in Somalia. And I don't know where to begin to resolve the problem, but I believe that sessions such as this, and I want to really praise Paul Camacho, Dr. Camacho, for pulling this group together. So that people can... Well, okay. Well, all the people here, you should give yourselves a hand. Come on, let's do it. And come together to talk about the issues that as we have and are doing. But sessions such as this on problem solving, there is no issue in the world that cannot be solved. There's no problem that cannot be solved. And it is the use of this mind, your mind, that we can come together to come to a resolve. And why don't we plan on doing that for the next session? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can continue the Q&A on an individual basis and dig in. And I want to make sure people are fed. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you stay and have something to eat and continue such a conversation.